record and share my screen and get started. Okay. So today we have adaptations in the wide world of frogs. I know you're surprised. We are going to move on to our learning targets. Learning targets look very familiar because they are identical to yesterday's. We are going to be referring explicitly to the text when answering questions. We did a really great job of that yesterday. You will also find the meaning of some unfamiliar vocabulary, and we are going to kind of take a look at what kind of things you can find in the glossary to help you understand vocabulary a little better, because we know one of the techniques that we can use when we are trying to work on unfamiliar vocabulary, we use the context and so forth, but we also can use a dictionary. And we know that glossary is one of the text features that we talked about on Monday that some books, nonfiction, informational text have. All right, so yesterday we embarked on page 6 and 7. We got some work on page 6 done. And so if you could have that open next to you, that would be great. We also spent a little bit of time looking at page 61 in your workbook. Page 61 was your KWEL, which had to do with what we know about frogs, what you might have known about frogs to begin with. So what your schema was to begin with. Then we were talking about answering some questions about what we wanted to know. And then we also added some ideas about what we learned yesterday. Mrs. Harrison is frantically trying to find that exact page, there we go, that she had. So I'm going to throw it under the dot camera a little bit. And one of the things that we noticed that we didn't do is we did not put in a source. We did not put in, and that would be important for us to do before we get too started with our materials here. So dot camera, let's see if I can make that any clearer. I don't know if that worked to make it clearer, but we'll try. So you wrote down some things you knew. You wrote down a couple of things you thought you might want to know. And now we are adding in some, yesterday at the end, we added in some things we learned. And now what I want to point out is that we have this sources. And so that we know that we are trying to become experts, our guiding questions for this particular module had to do with what do experts do? And how do we build our own expertise on a topic? And we know that one of the ways we build expertise when we are trying to become an expert is to do some research, to know some, to look at what other people have sometimes come up with. And those mean that we have sources. So in this spot right here, we are going to write, but I'm going to have you write it, I'm going to have you write it sideways. Because I know Mrs. Harrison would not do very well if we were writing, the way that the source is. But I know in your notebook anyway, it's sort of kind of this way. So we are going to write inside the sources because right now all of our information is coming from one place. And the name of the book is Everything.
What page is this?
This is page 61. This is the page that we already worked on yesterday on page 61. Thank you for double checking. That was very helpful. Thank you. Everything you need to know. So what do we notice about Mrs. Harrison's, about the first letter in most of these words? What do we notice? You should notice that they are capitals, right? So when we have a title of a book,
you muted yourself.
Oh, I think Mrs. Aubin was helping me out. There we go. Thanks, Mrs. Aubin.
It says that the host would
when we have words that are less than 4 letters, then we go ahead and if it's not an important word, so you has less than 4 letters, but it is an important word in this particular case, so we capitalize it. But 2 is not a very important word and it's less than 4 letters, so we are not going to capitalize it. Everything you need to know about, that's over 4 letters, so we're going to capitalize it. About frogs. Frogs is another important word. I'm not going to go, and because we know that the title of our book is And Other Slippery Creatures, we are going to just make sure that we get that part written there. And we're going to be adding some more information as well when we are going to find out more about where it was published and who contributed to this book and so forth. But we're just going to get that. I'm trying to add in a little bit at a time to pages 61 and 62. Just a little bit at a time as we go through. All right, so if you aren't sure about how to spell anything, where should that information come from? Right there, right? Now you'll notice that on their title, they chose to make, frogs capitalized and not all of the words, but we know the proper way to capitalize something. And it is the title of a book. And because it is the title of a book, we are going to underline it. Okay, it is the name of a book, and sometimes we can put it in italics depending on the situation, but in our case, because we are not typing it, we are writing it, and we will underline each of those words. Okay, so I've got that. If you're still working on that, you can use the title of your book to help you. Make sure all of those words have capitals except for the 2. And we're going to skip the And Other Slippery Creatures part for the moment. Okay. All right, my friends. So back to my slideshow here real quick. Oh, maybe not. So we just filled that. We got, so you should have something in the I think I know, something in the I want to know, something that we learned from yesterday, and our sources. We're slowly getting that filled out. So today we're going to go through our close readers information. You guys did an absolutely fabulous job of that yesterday. We took a really good, we took small chunks of text. So we went sentence by sentence, really thinking about what they meant, why certain words were why they were. If we had any words we didn't know, we kind of looked at it. We had the word breed yesterday. We talked about damp and moist, some of those words, and a little even about lungs. All right, so as we're moving on, what I want you to know is that one of the parts that is different about this unit than the last unit is the last unit we were coming up with why questions that had to do with frogs that we solved in a story, in a narrative, for sort of fantasy fiction sort of way. But you'll notice that as we're going through today, that we are really getting the real reason why pollywogs wiggle as we are learning more about frogs. So toward the end of today and then starting next week, we're going to start really analyzing what we are learning about pollywogs and how can we put that into how can we use that information to write, to become, again, that expert of frogs. So I want you to go ahead and flip to page 63. It shouldn't be too far from page 61. And yesterday we filled out some of the sections. We filled out the first 2 sentences and some of the water words. And I do want us to take, before we move on to the next sentence, I want us to look really quickly at the area that we were looking at. I'm going to turn on my dock. I'm going to put it over back to my dock camera. This section right here. And, oh, it's not terribly lovely. There we go. Okay, much better, not quite so shiny. All right, so one of the things that we also learned yesterday and the day before are the things that informational texts have. And you have this on page 72. And one of the things I want you to notice, you don't have to turn to page 72, but right here we have that one of the different types of text features that you can have are words in bold or italic type. And so this, I didn't quite get to this at the end of yesterday's assignment. so I wanted to point it out today. So if you go back to the section we finished with at the end of yesterday, it says most amphibians breed in water. Unlike reptiles, which lay tough-shelled eggs on land, most amphibians lay soft, jelly-like eggs in water. And if you notice, that's in that little section, we have both of those things that we were talking about as text features. You have your italics, which again are those words that are sort of on that slant. So we have amphibians, and we have soft, jelly-like eggs. Is there anybody who can tell me why they think the author decided to italicize both of those things? Why do you think that, and not the rest of it? Like, why did they choose amphibians and soft jelly-like eggs? Why do you think they did both of those? Madison, why do you think? Why would they italicize those two things, do you think?
Because, wait, what was the question again?
So the author italicized, so made, gave that slanty kind of font to amphibians, and also, and didn't do anything else in the rest of it except for soft jelly-like eggs. Why do you think the author did those two sections in italics?
Why?
What do you notice about both of them?
Because I noticed that they,
Do they go together?
yes.
Yes, right? They go together. And so because who has the soft jelly-like eggs?
The amphibians.
The amphibians. And so the amphibians is italicized, and the soft jelly-like eggs are italicized. So do you think the author was trying to help us make a connection?
Yes.
Because we're also talking about reptiles in these sentences too, right? But the author wants us to understand better. So if the author is using this technique, this text feature, to help us understand better that these two things go together, right? And so I also see some other, and those are also not only italicized, but they're also in bold. So why do you think an author puts things in bold? Who can help me with that question? Why would an author put things in bold? Noah, why do you think?
Because it's an important word.
Yeah, because the author is, that's a way for an author to sort of emphasize that, right? To point it out, to really make sure we pay attention to those particular words. An author is expecting you to read it. He or she can't stand next to you. And like when you guys read your lovely pourquois on Flipgrid, you used your voice to emphasize important words that you thought were important in your story. But in this case, the author isn't reading it to us. So the author has to show in bold what they think is important. Now, I see a word that continuously gets basically a bold appearance. Does anybody see a word that appears in bold twice in that section? Cole, what do you see?
Eggs.
Okay, they do have it, and that's what this whole thing is about, right? Eggs. So this one is really talking about that stage, right, of the life cycle. Okay, what other word do we see that's repeated in bold type there that the author, Marin?
Water.
Water, exactly. So do you think the author, Marin, thinks that we really need to pay attention to how important water is for a frog?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely. And we know that that's actually part of what we are trying to study today, or yesterday and today, is how water is super important for amphibians. And so the author, when we have an author that can't tell us in person, they have to use text features to help us understand that. And so you'll see that in bold. All right, we are going to go ahead and move on to our next sentence. So if you looked in this section right here, this is where we're moving over to, okay? All right. So the sentences, actually, is that where I'm going? Yes. Most baby amphibians live entirely in water. Called tadpoles, they swim like fish and breathe through gills. As they grow up, they develop legs and crawl onto land, but they must always be in wet places. Okay, so here, if we look really closely again at this section, and we look at what is the author, what was the gist? We're trying to think about, we're using that idea of a close reader finds out the gist. If we look at it closely, we'll notice again what is in bold. That word water again, right? Must be important. And then it says, called tadpoles, they swim like fish. So tadpoles also is in bold. So they're trying to help us understand that tadpoles are what this section's about, and they are amphibians, right? They're amphibians, the baby amphibians. And they swim like fish and breathe through gills. There's a lot of information going on there, but I think the next sentence is what we really want to look at as well. As they grow up, they develop legs and crawl onto land, but they must always be in wet places. So look at page 63. If we come to page 63, I'll wait till everybody's got that. Here's our section down here. There's that sentence. As they grow up, they develop legs and crawl onto land, but they must always be in wet places. So we have here another situation where we have two sentences that have been put together to help us better understand, but we can separate them into two sections and look at that word. I see another word there. That word but is in there. That conjunction is going to help us connect this idea with this idea and help us understand them better. So what should we write in this first box? Who has an idea of what out of that sentence should we write in the first box? Mr. Ryder, what do you think? What section should we put in that first box? Ryder Vani. Hi, buddy. Which section should we put in this one here? Oh, you're still muted, Mr. Ryder. Unmute for me. All right. Can we have somebody else help us out? My writer's figuring that out. Maybe he can help me with the second part. Miss Lila, go ahead and help me with the first part. And hopefully Ryder can help us with the second part.
First part is as they develop legs and crawl onto land.
Very good. Okay, as they grow up, we're going to take that section sort of as a side note and know that as tadpoles, part of their life cycle, as they grow up. So we're going to leave that section out for a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and put little parentheses around that, knowing that that is important to our whole story, but our whole sentence, but we are going to stick in here. They, I don't know where we came from. They develop legs and crawl onto land. They develop legs and crawl onto, sorry, my conjunction is sort of falling into that. They develop, and I just wrote it directly from here. So they develop legs and crawl onto land, but what does but tell us? But gives us a big sign that we need to pay attention to this next part, right? They crawl onto land, but something important is coming on. Lucas, what do you think that second section is going to be? What are we going to write in this next box, do you think?
I don't know.
Okay, well, look at the sentence. Look at the sentence. It's all right here. We took they develop legs and crawl onto land. That was our first section, right? But
they must always be in wet places.
Very good. That's what goes in there. So the author is using that conjunction to tell us, yes, they can go on land, but, and this is really important, they must always
be on wet places.
All right. So we have just gotten a lot of information from that, again, that one sentence. Why do they still need to be in wet places? What have we learned about frogs that tells us that they still, even as an adult, need to be near some place that is wet? Who remembers from yesterday? Oh, I'm testing your brain. All right, Astrea, I don't know why my mouth's not working today. Sorry, Astrea.
Helps them breathe.
Why they must always be in wet places is because we learned that they live partly on land and partly in water.
Right. So this really shows that, doesn't it? That they lived in water exclusively as tadpoles. They grow legs and now they're on land, but what else did we learn? So Astrea is correct. We definitely learned that they live partly, but why else? What else was super important that we learned yesterday?
They have to breathe through their skin only if it stays damp.
They do breathe through their skin. Thanks. I was hoping to be able to call on somebody who had their hand raised who hadn't had a chance yet. I have quite a few friends who have their camera turned off. I'd really love it if some of my friends could turn those cameras back on. Thank you. So they breathe through their skin, and it has to be wet. It has to be damp. Has to be moist to breathe. And if they don't have it wet, they can't breathe. Is breathing kind of important? Definitely, right? Definitely important. All right, so we're going to take a second, go quickly. Just turn your page to page 64. There we go. Okay, so can we add anything to this area here? Should we add anything in our note catcher on page 64? What should we add in? Looking for somebody who can help me figure out what could we add to our note catcher that we just learned in that small section of page 64. Charlie Carr, is your hand up or are you just scratching? Okay, no worries. Just checking. I want to leave you out. Josh Carter, what can we add?
That the frogs have to be in wet places.
Okay, so they live. So that's in this section, right? Live partly in water, partly. Who lives exclusively in water? What part of the amphibians live completely in the water? The tadpoles, right? The tadpoles.
The frogs that don't.
The tadpoles, let's go back to our thing. The tadpoles swim like fish and breathe through gills, right? So they are in the water. So tadpoles live in the water. And if we know that tadpoles have to live in the water, then that's definitely the part that they're living, entirely. We know that they need to keep their skin moist, so they have to have some area that has some water. I'm also looking at this section here now. It says, what is unique about how tadpoles breathe? Who can tell me how tadpoles breathe? Looking for somebody who could tell me how tadpoles breathe. Oh, look at all those hands. Good job. Those are my same friends who keep repeating. Okay, Haley Calendar. How do tadpoles breathe?
Tadpoles have to breathe in the water so they can breathe through their gills.
Very good. We just read that in our section, didn't we? They breathe through gills. Because they live in the water. So that is quite the transformation, because amphibians breathe through lungs, and they can only breathe if their skin is damp. Then our tadpoles, before they become frogs, breathe through gills. That's quite the change, isn't it? That is quite the change.
Miss Witherall?
All right. Getting our notes finished, page 64. It says page 4 at the top because it's our research notebook. Breathe through gills in the water. And I made sure that I spelled gills correctly because it was in my text. I could go back directly to the text, explicitly in the text, to answer this question, and look at my text and breathe through gills. So again, we're focusing on that learning target about how do we answer questions. We go back to the text and look carefully. All right. I'll let you go ahead and finish that up. I'm going to double check how I'm doing here on my. Okay. Our next section is going to be at the bottom of our page on page 7, where it says most baby amphibians. We're going to focus on this section that's on the, well, actually it starts with when a tadpole hatches out of an egg, but then we move on to this next sentence here. All right. So what does, let's read this little, let me go back to my, hopefully you're all looking in your book, but if you're not, here we go. So it says, so let's figure out, what does this paragraph have to do with then this paragraph? So let's take a look at it. When a tadpole hatches out of an egg, its first task in life is to eat what's left of its egg, which is full of nutrients. In most amphibians, the tadpole changes into an adult by a process called metamorphosis. So what does this paragraph have to do with that paragraph? Do they have
The tasks of
a relationship? Jensen, what do those two paragraphs have to do with each other? Oh, you're muted, my friend. Can you unmute for me? Jensen? So what's the first paragraph about, Mr. Jensen?
It is about
What was that whole paragraph about? Tadpoles, right?
most baby amphibians.
Most baby amphibians and how they breathe, right? How they how they live in the water. All right. And then what is this next paragraph mostly about?
Tadpoles, how tadpoles hatch.
How they hatch and then become
Metamorphosis?
Yeah, how they become adults, right, is metamorphosis. Very good. So these two paragraphs both have to do with being basically a baby amphibian and changing into an adult. Both of them have some information about being a baby and becoming an adult. This one also has to do with being a baby amphibian or tadpole and becoming and then turning into an adult, just giving us some more details about how that happens. So these two paragraphs are very much related. Now, if we look at the pictures around them, the illustrations, which we talked about text features, right? Frogs spawn. What do you think that word spawn might mean? Take a look at that picture and tell me, who can tell me what they think frogs spawn? Really, what's another way we could say that and look at it? Sernay, what do you think?
Is it A? Alicia?
Group of frog eggs.
Yep, frog spawn are frog eggs, right? They're the little frogs that are developing inside the egg before they, as this one talks about, hatch, right? So here are baby eggs, and then here's another picture of tadpoles, so we can get a
Frog spawn is
look at their body shape, right? Because here it says that they swim like fish, right? And they haven't developed, and they develop legs.
My name.
These illustrations are helping us understand about these jelly-like eggs and also about how we're going to get from this egg stage to an adult, right? Here's our tadpoles. Then we have another illustration over here that shows us then now we have an adult frog. Is there a big difference between this and this? Big difference, right? Big changes happening. That process, that metamorphosis, is quite large in a frog. We can really see the stages that frog goes in its life cycle. All right. Okay, so let's take real quick. Are there anything else that we need to add to our note catcher? Let's see. About how they breathe, what their differences are. No, you don't have anything where they mostly live. Nope, I think we're good for that. Those spots right there for the moment. So let's go over here to this next section where it says, I'm a tree frog. So we're sort of making a counterclockwise circle here. I am a tree frog. Everybody find that section there. This is very interesting. We have a lot of information here that is going to help us as well. I'm a tree frog. Most frogs live near a river or pools of water, but in rainforests, it is so humid that trees are wet all the time, allowing some frogs to stay in them permanently. They are called tree frogs and have huge sticky fingers to help them climb. Okay, lots of information there for sure. All right, well, on your page 63, we have underneath our water words, which we're going to add a word to in a minute. So as we are thinking here, I want you to think if you can figure out what word we're going to add to the water words from this sentence, okay? So let's look at it carefully. But in the rainforests, it is so humid. The trees are wet all the time, allowing some frogs to stay in them permanently. All right, that's quite a long sentence, and it has quite a lot of information in it. Mr. Logan, do you think you see what word we want to add to the wet words, or to the water words?
Humid.
Very good. Humid. And we talked a little bit about humid being an idea that has to do with the amount of moisture in the air, right? We talked about how Mrs. Aubin does not enjoy Florida during certain months of the year because it is very humid and it accentuates how hot it is. But in this case, it's really helpful to the frogs. And the frogs actually need it to be humid to be able to live in them. So here we spent a whole lot of time talking about how frogs had to live near water, like a river, or let's go back to this sentence here. Most frogs live near a river or pools of water. So if you think about when most of the time, especially when we were trying to write our pourquoi and we're trying to make it reasonable, we said the frogs needed to live near something that was, you know, a lot of you said ponds or lakes or rivers. A lot of you picked a water sort of place for your setting for your story. And so because most frogs do need to live, because we know that they breed in water, they have their eggs in water. They need their skin to be wet. So almost all the frogs need that. But you'll notice there's that word there. But in the rainforest, let's underline that conjunction. Conjunction is a word that connects things, right? And we really want to focus on that word because it's telling us, again, just like it was here and here, that something's different. When you have the word but, it's telling you there's a connection here, but there's some sort of difference. But in rainforests, so if you didn't know what a rainforest was, what do you think you could do to break that word down? How could you figure out what a rainforest is? Looks like a compound word to me. Does it look like a compound word to you? Two words put together. So Isabella, what do you think? Rainforest. What do you think? What would a rainforest be, do you think?
I think it is a forest where it gets a lot of rain and it's very damp and moist.
Okay, that would make sense, right? If it's called a rainforest, if we break it down into the two separate words that we have here, right? Forest being a place with lots of trees, right? Forest. And rainforest. Forest that gets a lot of rain, for sure. And continuing on with, it is so humid that trees are wet all the time. So if we didn't know what humid meant, if we weren't sure what it meant in our water words, it says are wet all the time. You could be imagining, if you were standing in a rainforest, if everything is wet, you can imagine what the air might be like and come up with your own idea of what humid means. We talked about it this week earlier, but we could use the words, the context of the rest of the sentence to imagine what humid might mean. Allowing some frogs to stay in them permanently. So we need to break this down into two ideas again. And guess what word goes in the middle? Anybody have any guesses? What word is Mrs. Harrison probably going to put in the middle?
Allowing.
Any ideas? Allowing? Well, that's the word that is in the middle. You're right. All right, well, let's try breaking it up into the parts first, and let's see if it reveals itself. What do you think the first section is going to be? Who can tell me what you think the first section is? Sawyer, I'm not sure what you're playing with here, bud, but you need your pencil out, so you're right, okay? All right. Looking for my friends who are helping me out. Mr. Gavin, what do you think is going to go in that first box? Oh, you're still muted, my friend.
But in rainforests, it's so humid.
All right, so we're gonna remember how over here we had the parentheses. We're gonna kind of stick the parentheses around that part as well. But you had the right idea. It is so humid. The trees wait, nope, sorry. So humid. The trees are wet all the time. Good job. Mr. Henrik, are you getting this down, bud? Mr. Henrik, you getting it down, buddy? Page 63. Okay, just making sure. You were a little far away from your book, so it was hard to imagine that you were getting that written down for me. Mr. Finn, did you get that written down on page 63 for me? All right, thank you. Mr. Charlie Carr, are you all done with that part already? All right, so all of these sentences that you notice that we're working on here have two ideas, and for here, for most of them, they contradict each other in some way. They make a comparison between two different things. In this case, we are saying why something can happen instead of saying two opposites or two differences. In this case, we are telling this happens, so this can happen. So instead of having the word but, even though but is part of our word at the beginning, it's not separating these two ideas. So what do we think is going to go in that second box? Who thinks they have a plan for what's going to go in that second box? You guys should be getting really good at this. Come on. Come on. All right, Cole, help me out.
Allowing some frogs to stay in them permanently.
Very good. All right. So we're going to say, so I'm going to take that allowing word out for just a minute. Some frogs, because we're going to talk about what allowing means. We're also going to break that permanently down a little bit. So let's look at that word them. It allows for some frogs to stay in them permanently. What is them stand for? What are the frogs staying in? What are the frogs staying in?
The humid trees.
The trees, right? Miss Elena, you think that's right? It stands for trees, right? So in a moment, we're going to talk. So Miss Elena, I'm going to give you a job, okay? Since you're really focused. When we talk about pronouns in a couple of minutes, I want you to remember the word them, okay? That's your job, is to remember the word them, because we're going to be looking for some nouns and some adjectives and some other words that we found today. And I want you to remember that that is a pronoun because it's a word that takes place of another one. So them takes place of the trees, right? That's what the humid trees as we added in that humid word. All right. The allowing, let's look at allowing. What word do we see in allowing? August, what word do you see in allowing? What's our root word in allowing?
Allow.
Allow, right? What does that mean to you, August? What does allow mean?
Like someone allows you to candy.
Okay, well, so do they let you do something if they allow you?
Yes.
Yeah, they let something happen, right? So in this case, allowing some frogs, so it's letting some frogs stay in them permanently. So I'm going to think of a word that, so it is so humid, the trees are wet all the time. Instead of putting allowing there, I want us to just think about what word we could put in there that would make sense instead of allowing. It is so humid, the trees are wet all the time. Blank frogs to stay in them permanently.
Letting frogs.
Oh, that would work. I'm just going to put this little tiny one in here. So it is humid. It is so humid, the trees are wet all the time. So some frogs stay in them permanently. So in these sentences, we had this but not the, then sort of the case where we were disagreeing or saying some differences. In this case, this is what's happening, so this can happen next. Pretty cool. Different way to connect two different ideas and put them together. In this case, we're saying how they're different. In this case, we're saying how they're different. And this way, we're saying that because of because of this, we still have to have this. And this one has to do with basically, this is what's happening in the world, so this can happen. We're letting the frogs, we're allowing the frogs, because they can stay someplace where it's still moist and not be by a frog or by a river or a pond, and still be a nice happy frog. All right, so I want to look at that word permanently real quick. What word do you see inside permanently? Oh, Elena's on fire today. All right, Elena, what word do you see inside permanently?
Tournament.
Okay. Permanent is our root word, isn't it? It's got a lot of syllables. Permanent. It's got 3 syllables. Pretty long word. Permanent. And then what is our suffix? Mr. Leo, what's our suffix at the end there?
Permanent.
So that's our root word. We're looking for our suffix. There's 2 letters at the end.
L-Y.
Very good. So we're going to circle those just like we did with partly. Remember up here with partly, that L-Y, and here's our L-Y again. Partly meant that they were parts, sometimes in the water, sometimes on the land, and that ly helped us understand how they live. That's an adverb. In a minute, I'm going to ask you about adverbs again, and this is your example, another example for an adverb. Permanent. What does the word permanent mean? Let's take the ly out of the situation for a moment. What does permanent mean? Permanent. Do I see hands raised? Let's see, making sure I get lots of answers here. Miss Haley Calendar, what does permanent mean?
Permanent means that if you get a tattoo or something and if it's permanent, it can't come off.
Okay. Yeah, like a permanent marker, right? Shouldn't write on yourself in a permanent marker. Okay, Madison, help us out. Add some to that, please.
I think a permanent means like something that doesn't go away.
Okay, something that you guys, both of you added some good things there. So permanent means something that doesn't change or that stays for good. So when Haley was saying, like you have something that you can't get rid of. So something that doesn't change or something that's going to continue. So let's read that sentence again. Some frogs allowing some frogs to stay in them permanently. So does the frog need to go back to the water? No, he can stay unchanged. He can stay in the tree for good, right? Keep it for good. Now, that's going to be interesting. We're going to have to find out later about how they breed then, because they breed in water. So we're going to have to find out later. That's maybe a good question to add to your question page. How do tree frogs breed then if they need water? Because the tree frogs are staying in the trees. That's an interesting idea. You might want to add that to your questions about things you wonder, perhaps. Just thinking about that. So I would like you real quick, keep while it's in your head, look at page 75. We're going to do this super quick, friends. So I hope you have your pencils ready. Everybody have your pencils ready. So I want you to think about, when we're looking at this sentence, but in the rainforest, it's so humid, the trees are wet all the time. allowing some frogs to stay in them permanently. So what would you draw here? Really quick.
I would draw like a wet tree with a tree frog in it.
Okay, go for it. Everybody on page 75. Mr. Charlie Carr, you're getting your drawing on. Mr. Charlie Carr. Hi, bud. We're drawing on page 75. We're drawing on page 75. Just real quick. I'm only going to give you like a minute. So when it says sketch, it seriously means sketch. All right. Draw what you think it would look like to have frogs in the rainforest. Okay, I see some busy drawing. Good. Miss Moran, what did you do to make your trees look wet? Did you do anything in particular to make your trees look wet?
I drew little like raindrops.
Nice. All right. Good job. Where did you put your frogs, Serne? Where in the tree did you put your frogs? Or where, or if you haven't yet, where do you plan on putting your frogs?
I'm putting my frog here. I haven't got the other trees yet.
Gotcha. Toward the top, right? Toward the top of your tree? Good. Okay. So if we know that the trees are wet all the time, they're allowing the trees. Are the frogs going to be at the bottom of the tree then? Or the top of the tree, do you think? Or the middle of the tree? Where do you think those frogs might be?
Making adjustments to and then go through.
Towards the top.
Towards the top, right? We're not going to have them near the bottom. Because what do you think that frog wants to do? Frog, we haven't talked about tree frogs yet, but we will. But they probably don't want to be anywhere near something that might want to eat them, right?
Yeah. Well, he does.
So the higher up you are, maybe the luckier you are not to get eaten. Okay, very nice, my friends. I'm gonna hopefully have you wrap that up. Down at the bottom of the sentence, it does say, in the rainforest, it is so humid the trees are wet all the time, allowing some frogs, that's what goes in those last words down there, some frogs to stay permanently.
4 levels now.
That's what goes at the bottom.
What do you want?
And you know where that sentence is? If you're frantically trying to figure out, I see Lucas desperately looking at the looking at my paper, which is good, buddy, which is good. But if you can't see it well, or if you're looking for it and Mrs. Harrison puts it away, it's right here. It's right here at the top. All right. Okay, so now we did a whole lot of work thinking about frogs today. I want us to spend just a couple of minutes before you guys head out. Let me see if I can find it. So who can tell me what we called the process that frogs have to go through? It's that big long word. Paxton, do you remember it? The big long word that frogs go through to become adults. Metamorphosis. Good job. And if you know what metamorphosis was, Paxton, where do you think I could look for it?
Well, yeah, that's not
Where in my book might I look?
around on the bottom.
I think the first page.
Okay, the first place, or could I look in, there was an area where it told me what word. Do
The snake.
you remember this part of the book? What's this part, Mr. Paxton? What's this?
Glossary.
A glossary. So if I didn't know what metamorphosis was and I wanted to find it, I would head to that text feature that has metamorphosis It says, I'll look at it. Here's major change in an animal's body during its life cycle, as when a tadpole changes into a frog. Do we know any other animals that go through metamorphosis? Oh, I should see lots of thumbs up, shouldn't I? What other animal do we know firsthand that goes through metamorphosis, Miss Bird?
Butterfly.
Butterflies, right? Caterpillars and butterflies. We know that there was metamorphosis there. But if we didn't know, we could go to our glossary and look for it for sure. All right, we're almost done, friends. I'm going to look at this real quick. These parts of speech. So in the next couple of weeks, we're really going to be focusing on different types of words that are grouped because they have a different job in the sentence. Words always have what we call a part of speech. It's a certain part of what their job is, okay? And we are going to be focusing on really 4 of them, but I'm going to hit a 5th one real quick today because Elena, who promised me she'd help me. So we're going to go through. So I want you to look at page 63. Everybody have their page 63. Mr. Sawyer, page 63. Not in the book. You're looking at page 63 on your. You can have the book out, but I want you to look at page 63. Okay, who can find one word that we can stick inside this box as an example of a noun? A word that names a person, place, thing, or idea. What would be a noun that we could find on this page? Isabella.
Amphibians.
Amphibians. Very good. All right. Hopefully it's going to let me type.
This is so they can get in.
All right. Amphibians. That's not a person, but it's a thing for sure, right? It's a live living creature. Excellent. What's another one? Madison.
That way.
Reptiles.
Very good. Reptile. Very nice. Cole, what's another one?
Frogs.
Frog. Very good. And when I add an S to it, it makes it a plural noun, right? Plural noun makes it more than one. Haley Booker.
Lizard.
Lizard. Okay, wait a minute. Where on page 63 does it say lizard? We're sticking to page 63. You're right. Lizard is a noun, but I want to stick to page 63. Okay? Just for now. You're going to be writing a lot of nouns in the future, but so you could write lizard for that next one. But I want everybody's looking at the on page 63. All right? So who else has a noun for me?
Only 79 pages in the
Apples.
I'm looking for one more. Come on, friends. I need one more. Miss Sunny Poe.
Tadpoles.
Tadpole. That works. Very nice. Tadpole. Metamorphosis actually is an idea. I could stick if I don't have really a lot of room in there, but I could even put metamorphosis because metamorphosis is an idea. It's a change that happens. Even it would go in there. All right, Miss Elena, this is you. What word is our pronoun that is a word that replaces another word? Uh-oh, I can't find her.
Pushed up.
Miss Elena.
This.
Them. All right. What? And them took place of the word?
So the people put
Trees.
Took place of trees. Very good. All right. I need a verb. I need an action word. I'm gonna give you a hint. The word live in the very first sentence. Amphibians are animals that live. Live is an action word. Can anybody else find another verb from something that we did
Look, I think
that
you
could
an
have
example.
an action word? A verb. Anybody else? Cole's got his hand. He's thinking about it. Anybody else? Miss Ellie, any ideas? Haley Calendar, any ideas? Action words.
Have.
Haley, go for it.
I forgot.
It's okay. How about look at that second set? How about let's look at it. It says reptiles have scaly skin. So what do they do? They have, right? How about the second one? Reptiles do what to eggs? What do amphibians do? They
Lay eggs.
Very good. All right. What do amphibians do when they grow after they grow legs? They
Crawl.
Oh, very good. All right. An adjective is a describing word that describes the noun. So I see a ton of them about skin. What adjectives do you see on page 63? Miss Sunny Poe.
Slimy.
Say it one more time.
Slimy.
Slimy. Slimy is an adjective, but is it on page? Was it on page 3? I'll put slimy, but it's technically not on page 63. Does anybody see another one? Mr. Logan Peters. What's another word that describes their skin?
Slippery.
Silly.
Where is that on page 63? All right, I'll take it.
Silly.
I'll take it, but I don't think it's on that page. How about scaly? How about soft? All right, are there some that we found on that page? All right, last one. This is the last part, my friends. We got this. Last two. All right, adverb. Now, an adverb describes a verb, an action, or it can also describe another adjective or an adverb. But I want to give you a hint. Most of the time, they end in ly, and we made a big deal about them yesterday and today. Look at page 63 and see if you can find me an adverb.
Permanently.
Permanently. I don't know who said it, but yes, thank you so much.
Partly.
Permanently. Partly. You got it. Woo! All right. We got nouns. We got stuck in a pronoun there. We got our verbs, our adjectives, and our adverbs. And I'm telling you, friends, in the next couple of weeks, we're really going to hammer these different kinds of words and their jobs. And all of these words we found just in the work we did today. All right. So I'm just going to give you a quick little preview. So I want you to think, just in your heads. We're not saying it out loud. Now that we've learned a lot more about tadpoles in the scientific-y part, why do pollywogs wiggle? Think about that. Because on Monday, we're really going to break that down and we're going to do some writing about it because now we're almost experts. We've done some research. So why do pollywogs wiggle? Think about why they do. All right. Not our story that we wrote about, our cute little, our guy Steve and our chameleon, right? All right. Okay, friends. Nice job today. Please make sure that page 63 and 64 are completed because you're going to need them for the future. So if you are not done with page 63 and 64, you might want to go back and rewatch some of this video so that you can get those parts filled in. All right. So Mrs. Aubin, we'll see some of you at 12:45 for all block. Some of us have been leaving early. Don't leave early. And make sure, and if you're in my OG group, I'll see you at 12:45. Lennox, Lila, and Max Fox, don't forget to go see Mrs. Woodland at 11:15. All right. If anybody needs anything, go ahead and stay on. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up.